So we've just included this, one of the biggest question, if you like, which should be the biggest question that we're asked: should we be handing down your farm now? So I put a quote up there in terms that the unknown, and this is, we come across this so often, the unknown in the mind of the next generation down, if you like, has the largest influence on ambition, motivation, and therefore farm viability. And I find there's a direct correlation between communication within the farm and whether they sit in the bottom 25% of our benchmark. So, and to take that even a further stage, a dysfunctional family is in the bottom 25%. Okay, so therefore, there's a lot. This is a huge subject. Okay, so what we've got is: should you be handing down the land, the property, or should you be handing down the business? And if you hand down the business, are you handing down your land and property automatically? And that's probably a legal point. Divorce risk comes into the equation in every discussion we have. People living longer, and Emma mentioned this, which is mental capacity problems. So because we are living longer, and you're going to live to 100, did you say? 1 in 10 chance of living to 100, but will you have mental capacity in your last few years? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point I was coming to, yes. No, but it is an issue. At some stage, the elder generation who haven't finalised what's going to happen, can't sign legal documents anymore. So there's wills, partnership agreements, and annual accounts are the 3 major documents. We can add to that prenuptial agreements as well. And so if you're handing down the business in a partnership, Julie, are you handing down the land as well if the land is in the balance sheet?
No, thank you. No, not necessarily. I mean, a partnership agreement is just a contract, and you will have capital accounts, which shows who is entitled to the gain on that land. So you will you're not necessarily handing down and transferring land ownership just because you're bringing the next generation into the farming business.
Exactly, yes, good. Yeah, and I think that's the question that everybody asks. We can't hand it down because we can't bring them into partnership because they'll have part of the farm, and that's a big wrongful thinking. If you can get those documents, partnership agreements, and reflected in the annual accounts, because you need the annual accounts to reflect what's in that partnership agreement, which is what we spend a lot of time doing. So I'm going to pick on Tom. Tom, who is here. So, Tom, you've left the film industry to make your millions in farming. I understand.
When you put it like that, it seems pretty foolish, actually.
Yeah. And you were going to bring your father here, but he's not here, I understand. So
no, he's resting. He's resting.
Okay. So therefore, I can freely ask you. So you come home, obviously, and that's not going to be too personal because I haven't. Tom knows I'm going to ask him a question. Didn't know what it was. So, so Tom, do you want to comment on perhaps your experience? You've come home from completely outside, of course.
Yeah, there's been some great points today, especially around communication. I think that's really important.
Sure.
But just looking at the kind of prompts up on the screen, I think initiative is a really, really important thing as well. And if I just give an example, our Queen is 93 years old, 95, and her son's 73.
Yeah.
That's great for the firm. It's not great for a farm. If he's 73 before he makes a decision, that's quite tough. So, and actually, my father was scared into, I suppose, just considering this a little bit more a few years ago at Melton Market in the office. He was in his early 60s, and there was a chap next to him, the same age, and he was presented with a bill, and he said, "I'll just get my father to sign the check."
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that actually as soon as you get to a certain age you're defunct, but actually it's really important to get that balance and to have an understanding. So we haven't got it right, but we're learning every day.
Sure. Yeah. So it's I don't know if anybody else wants to make a comment, but this is so common a situation. So I mentioned earlier on about Boris keeping his act together, which he's sort of struggling to keep his team together at the moment, and if the wheels fall off the Conservative train. So, and Labour government come in, we could be facing, Sam, did you want to say, we could be facing APR. Going back to my land value point, the 6,000 or the 60% of the land value is based on capital gains tax and inheritance tax planning, inheritance tax reliefs, of course. So if we lose some of those, and we could be in trouble. And as I said, we have some bank managers in the room, so I'm not going to ask them for comments, but they might be worried if we did get some changes.
Well, yes, if we lose APR, there could be a lot of sort of very worried people about. But I think one of the things you could do, you can bank the reliefs that are currently there and make use of the reliefs. But I think it's sort of, you shouldn't just let the tax tail wag the dog. I think it's really important. Every case, every family is different. The scenarios are different. It might be time to sort of hand on. Sometimes deathbed planning, it's sometimes actually hanging on to those assets can be very valuable for what we sort of term as deathbed planning, which sounds pretty morbid, but it can really help some families. And I think the one thing, I think, as sort of Tom said, we find is a lot of families have got sort of sons, daughters in their 40s and 50s, and they actually have no assets. And actually, for those of us that aren't in farming families, you sort of have your own family, you buy a house, you get a mortgage, you pay your mortgage off. You get to a stage in life where in your 50s, you like to start to think you can start thinking about planning for your family. But actually, there are quite a lot of family farms where those in their 50s can't do that because they haven't...
up in that top line, the unknown. Absolutely,
yes.
Which is related to profitability.
Yeah.
Very much so, isn't it?
So I think it's not one size fits all. Everyone is different, and it's a lot of considerations to have a think about.
We're doing what we call family agreements, which is basically family AGMs. I think somebody mentioned that. You did, Emma, I think. We do what I call family AGM, getting families together and talking and doing family agreements, and we're doing those every week nearly. And that's the key thing. That's what we're trying to. So when you've got a son or a daughter at home, developing and pushing the farm, and not knowing whether they have to buy out their brothers and sisters one day. So the more they develop the farm, the more they've got to pay to buy it out. And you imagine being in that position, perhaps some of you are in that position, and some of you have been in that position, and not knowing, do you still progress and push that business forward or not? Or do you hold back? And so it comes back to the unknown, that key word, the unknown. So Ian, now it is your turn, I think. So obviously you've been away, working in London in the grain industry, then came home to farm. And I know you're a strong advocate of young people entering in the industry as well. Did you want to say a couple of words about family succession? Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Gary. I suppose the only thing I'd add is that you've touched on it already, really, but what's fair isn't always equal, and what's equal isn't always fair. So, and I do think that in that situation where you have the generation that's succeeding that isn't involved in the business is understanding that family and business aren't the same thing. Because, if those that aren't in the business just see the value of the asset and not it as a going concern, that makes for quite an uncomfortable conversation.
Thanks, Ian. Does anybody else want to comment? And I'm sure there are other people in the room I think I know there are other people in the room who have succession points, but may not want to comment. So it is very, very common situation, and I think the key thing is get talking and amongst yourselves. Quite often, I would say that if you talk amongst yourselves, you'll argue. But when there's what I call a stranger in the room, you won't argue as a family. So, and that's when I sit in a room and I'm the stranger in the room, everybody behaves themselves and they don't argue. But you can imagine that if it's just the family there, you get people walking out and it doesn't achieve anything. So it's important to get what I would call a stranger in the room, so that you will all behave yourselves and reach something. Good. Okay. I think that's all what we wanted to say. This crops up all the time with us. So it's around 5:30, which is the target date we had, 17:36. So we have got drinks and food afterwards. Once we finished. No. Oh, in 5 minutes we'll have drink and food. In 5 minutes we will have drinks and food. So my thank you is going to be 5 minutes long. No, so I just want to hopefully you've enjoyed all of this. You know, I found it informative. We tried to pull together all the topics that are relevant. We think are relevant, which was the biodiversity net gain, which is really exciting. I find that really exciting, and I think that on some farms we can make more money out of all of that natural capital than we can from BPS. Would you say, George? Yeah. Sorry? It's looking that way, absolutely. Yeah. So, and Alex, do you agree with that? So, from a groundswell, and Paul Spackman agrees as well. Yeah. Okay. Paul, did you want to say something because you're involved in a lot of these? So we got 5 minutes. Okay. Yes.
There was talk earlier on about FBT levels, but I'm advising people at the moment not to go over £100 because the people are overlooking. Although BPS is supposedly here till 2027, change of occupier, it goes next year, and no one's really picking up on this. So 15th of May 2023 at midnight, entitlements cease to exist.
Yes, of course.
And the BPS then stays with the occupier. If the occupier leaves, he takes the BPS with him, whether he knows it or not. A lot of them don't know it. Landlords don't know it. Landlords agents don't know it. But he takes the BPS with him. It's gone off the farm. So and that's autumn of next year. So somebody taking an FBT in autumn 23 will be doing so without any BPS whatsoever. And that needs to be factored in to rent renegotiations and tendering exercises. And people are, it actually came out last week and it's still being unpicked. But that's, from my point of view, that's the elephant in the room, I think. We can't assume BPS is here for the next 6 years.
Yeah, sure.
It's not here for 18 months. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So those of you who are tenants on FBTs, the tenant gets the BPS. That's what you're saying, Paul, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we had George talking about that very exciting subject, and I know many of you have come here to because of that topic, actually, and it's something we're talking about all the time. And as I said, I think it's something that something that where we can make more money than the BPS itself. Emma, thank you very much. So thank you, George, and thank you, Emma, for talking about succession. Succession, and so my voice is going up and down, I think, at the back there. So succession from a slightly different angle. Emma, as I said, does all the personal link, brings all the personal family into it. And Alec, thank you very much for talking about Yagro and all the details that you go into on all your 40,000 acres, I believe, which is what you farm in hand. And so just finally, to thank Rez, who is at the back there somewhere, who actually pulled a lot of this, all of this together in terms of logistics and everything. If she probably can't hear me. There she is. Thank you very much, Rez, for all the work you've done. And so finally, thank you all for coming along to this afternoon versus evening, and I hope you have found it informative, enjoyable. We have got some food in about 2 minutes' time now, I guess, and some drinks at the back, so stay as long as you like. This is a very important part of it, I always find, is afterwards, where you can all talk together, or you can talk to us. I'll talk to any of the speakers as well. So thank you all for coming. And as I said, those of you who came for the topics are those of you who want to be famous on film. So you're equally invited the same. Okay, thank you all very much. And so that's it. Thank you.